Something had to give for the 1-5 CF Montreal. Pressure on Olivier Renard to make a move to help out his coach. He did just that in terms of bolstering the offense earlier today, but everyone's wondering who's going to replace Kamal Miller, who was traded to Inter Miami. I'm Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Are CF Montreal better or worse? Does the system change? And in Bryce Duke, did they find a Jordy Mihailovic in the making? We'll discuss all of that. Jeremy Filosa joins me coming up, and a guest appearance by Michelle Kaufman of the Miami Herald. She's the one who broke the trade.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
I'm Marinaro. Big day for CF Montreal. I bring in Jeremy Filosa right away from EMFC at Ezio. Jeremy, how are you?
I'm doing good, my friend. How are you?
Very, very well. CF Montreal, after 6 games, 1 win, 5 losses, 3 goals scored. 1 was a PK, 2 were headers. None was actually off the foot with the ball in play. And Olivier Renard had to do something. He tried to bolster the offense today. He acquires Ari Lassiter, a second forward, and Bryce Duke, a player who can play as an 8, maybe even as a 10. Is he a Jordy Mihailovic in the making? Why don't we do this, Jeremy? Without further ado, we'll bring in the star of the day, the one who broke the trade at 1:34 p.m. Eastern time from the Miami Herald, Michelle Kaufman. Thanks for doing this.
Sure. It was a big day. It was a big day for both teams, really, to be honest. Inter Miami got $1.3 million, which this is all kind of paving the way for potential summer signings of big names from Europe. That's the plan anyway. We'll see if it comes to fruition, but that's what all of this really is about for Miami anyway.
It was a big day for you too, because you're the one who broke the story.
I did break the story. I heard some whispers earlier in the day that something was happening, and I called around my sources and I was able to confirm it. So I was able to file my story right away, and I was the first one, which is hard to do these days. As you know, it's hard to break anything. There's so many people covering the league, nationally. And so it was, my sources came through today. That I'll just leave it at that.
30 minutes later, CF Montreal actually confirmed the trade, and so did Inter Miami. Let's, a big portion of the people that are going to be watching and listening are, of course, Montrealers and fans of CF Montreal. They want to know exactly what they're getting, Michelle. All right. So talk to me about Bryce Duke, who seems to be the key to this trade for CF Montreal. My first question is he more comfortable as an 8 or as a 10?
He's definitely more comfortable as a 10. One of the reasons that, they love him. They really did love him. He's a very young, he's 22 years old. They just signed him to a contract extension, a long-term contract extension. About 3 weeks ago, I was at a press conference with Phil Neville singing his praises and saying, this is the future of our club, and we have high hopes for him, and he's going to be a big player. So it's not that they didn't like him. They definitely did. But what happens is with Miami, he really is more of a 10. He's an attacking midfielder. He's a playmaker type. And, last year he got replaced by Pozuelo. He was trying to get playing time, and then they brought in Alejandro Pozuelo, who was a 10. So he got shifted to the side. Then this year they brought back Pizarro. Rodolfo Pizarro is back from Mexico. So once again, Bryce Duke is kind of on the outside a little bit looking in. They've been trying him at the 8. They've been trying him as defensive midfielder for the last few weeks since Gregory, the team captain, Brazilian, a very good defensive midfielder, he got injured and he's going to be out for 6 months. He had a serious injury. He just had surgery. He's in a cast. So they were trying to sort of groom Bryce Duke a little bit to play a more defensive role, to give him a spot on the field, because they really do like him. But that is not his natural position. He's much more of an attacker than a defender. He's an offensive player. He's creative. He's bold. He's really little. He's really small, but he's gutsy and he's bold and he's creative. And I know that Phil Neville loved him, and this was a very difficult decision, I'm sure, for them to get rid of him. But this was not really about them wanting to discard Bryce Duke. This was about a big puzzle that Inter Miami is trying to put together all the pieces to try to persuade Busquets to come from Barcelona and his buddy Lionel Messi to come from France. So this is all part of that big picture. They needed some cash. They were able to get some pretty big cash in this deal, $1.3 million. And they got Kamal Miller, whom I can tell you for a fact was on their radar in the preseason. They were trying to get a deal for him in the preseason, and that didn't happen. I think it was, maybe the price was higher then. I'm not sure what went on, but they were unable to make a deal for Kamal Miller, and so they ended up getting Sergei Kristov from the Ukraine. He came in, and he's been starting. But I think Miller is probably
he actually scored versus Montreal earlier this season.
He did. That's right. He scored. That's right. So anyway, I see they really like Kamal Miller. I see Kamal Miller playing alongside the Ukrainian player, or, instead of he's going to be pushing McVeigh, who has been starting but has been a little bit up and down. I see him starting in that position, center back, or it's possible they could play 5 in the back and have sort of 3 defenders, and then have Negri and Yedlin more as, fullbacks on the wings. So they're either going to swap to 5 in the back, or it's going to be 4, and he's going to be battling with McVeigh for that position. But I know that they like him a lot. He's been on their radar for quite some time. I know that they tried to make a deal in the preseason for him that didn't come through. And now they finally got him, plus $1.3 million. And the price that they're paying is losing 2 offensive players, which, by the way, you're saying Montreal is 1 and whatever. Inter Miami's only 2 wins with 5 losses and has 4 shutouts. They have not scored 4 games. They've had big fat zeros on the offensive end. They've not been able to find the back of the net either. So it's a
Don't
little
worry,
bit.
Michelle. As soon as Messi arrives, they're going to score every game. I guarantee you.
Okay. All right. When that happens, yeah, we'll see. We'll talk again. But for now, there is no Messi. And for now, there were no goals in 4 of their 7 games. There have been no goals. So they are taking a bit of a gamble, giving up 2 offensive-minded players for a defender. But, I guess they're willing to take that gamble.
Michelle, if I may, I have a few questions also for you. You mentioned, obviously, that there was a new contract that was signed for Bryce Duke. He was extended through 2025. There's an option for 2026. Any idea what kind of salary was included in there? I know that's not public, and it'll probably be released by the Players Association, but he was making very little money. Are we expecting a big pay increase or not?
I think a decent pay increase, but I really don't know the exact amount, but I would think that it would be a decent pay increase. I mean, from what I understand, Montreal was very, very interested in him. They whoever it is, whether it's the sporting director, whether it's the coach, they really see him as a young, creative player that has a lot of upside, which is really what Miami thought too. That's why they signed him to this deal, because he was a homegrown player with LAFC, and so he was making like the bare minimum. And Miami did bump him up to a salary that he seemed pretty happy with, although he didn't tell us what it was. But he was so happy to finally be off the homegrown salary, be like a real legit player with a real legitimate salary, and have some security, he thought. He walked into camp this morning thinking that he's someone that they're investing in for the future, and he left, to board a plane to a different country. So, this is professional sports, right? That's how it works. But I think he's a very interesting player. He's a really hardworking player. He's creative. He's definitely more of an offensive player, though, than a defender.
Okay, and maybe another question on Ariel Lassiter, obviously more of a winger, striker, but is there any chance that he can play as a wing back, according to you, with that left foot, or is that not really an option?
Well, I mean, he's definitely left-footed. He loves to run up and down the left sideline. So
Okay,
whether
that's
he's
good. That's
yeah,
already good.
yes, he does love to run up and down the left. He's very fast. He's probably, if he's not the fastest player on the Inter Miami team, he's one of the fastest players. He has blazing speed. I mean, I honestly thought they should have played him more in these recent games where they have not been scoring. I really don't know why they weren't using him more. I think he's a very good option. He scored last year. He's very good with his left foot. He's extremely fast. And, I could see him in either position. I mean, I think he's mostly played left wing. But if he were to play, left wing back, a little bit further back, and just make a lot of sprints up the left sideline and cross it in, I could see him in that role too. He's a smart guy. He's a really good guy. I think both of these guys are players that your fans and their teammates and you and the media are going to like dealing with. They're both very nice young men, very ambitious, and both of them, to be honest, were good offensive players, and I think Miami will miss both of them. I guess if they get Lionel Messi, all will be forgiven and everything will be great. Right now, they don't have him yet. They made a big commitment to Joseph Martinez, who has not scored yet. He's played in 6 of the 7 games he was with the Venezuelan national team. He did score for the Venezuelan national team, but he has not scored yet. He has not scored in 6 games for Inter Miami. So that is a project that so far is not paying dividends. I'm sure that
Michelle, if I can, sorry to interrupt, but nowhere near the player he was prior to a couple of ACL injuries.
Right. No. And he got very out of shape in the off season. By his own admission, he didn't work out, I don't think, a single day in the off season. His girlfriend had a baby. So he was, with a newborn baby and this and that. So he came in a little bit thick, a little bit out of shape, and I think that they thought that he was going to work his way into shape maybe quicker than he has. So he has not delivered yet what was
wanting to take a page out of Gonzalo Higuain's book, maybe.
Oh, yeah. I'm calling this Gonzalo 2.0. I mean, this is exactly the same situation. I think Phil Neville knew coming in that this was going to require motivation. And I think Phil felt that since he already did that with Gonzalo, he had a player who clearly is capable of scoring goals, but was not doing it, was maybe not working as hard on his fitness, kind of thought that he could just do it on instinct. And he was able to, by benching Gonzalo and by challenging him and bringing Leo Campana to a starting position over Gonzalo, that motivated Gonzalo, and Gonzalo ended up having an amazing year. I think this may be the same exact storyline this season. He already the other day, Phil Neville said that he's disappointed and that, they need more from Joseph Martinez and that there will be changes in the lineup, that players who are comfortable are not going to be comfortable anymore next week. So I would not be surprised if there's a benching or a near benching or something to try to put a fire under Joseph Martinez. So, like I said, they're taking with a team that's really not scoring. Leo Campana just came back from injury last week. It was his first game. He has not scored all season. And the idea was it was going to be 2 forwards, Campana and Joseph Martinez working together. They really played together for the first time last week. They lost 1-0 to Dallas. So I don't know. They're giving up offense for defense. Yeah.
When Lassiter comes in off the bench, is he coming in as a left winger, or is he coming in to replace one of the forwards and serve as a second forward? Because I got 2 different reports on Lassiter today. Someone told me he's more comfortable playing the left wing. Someone else who knows him very well said to me, he's not a winger. They might play him at left wing every now and then, but he's not a winger. He's more comfortable as a second forward in link-up. Where is he more comfortable, Michelle?
Yeah, he prefers to be a forward. And, when they brought him in, like last year, he played a lot at forward. This year, because of having Joseph, but see, what happened last year was the same as this year. Last year, they had Gonzalo Higuain and they had Campana. sometimes they were playing together. Now, when Gonzalo was struggling, Lassiter got to play more, or Lassiter would come in off the bench to replace one or the other. Campana got injured. Gonzalo had his issues. So he did play. Lassiter played mostly as like a third forward in that on that roster. This year, they have been playing, I think, because of the left foot and because they have so many forward type players. They have been playing him more on the left wing. But I think he prefers to play as a true forward.
Got it.
But I think he'll play anywhere. At this point, he wants to play. So if they tell him to play on the left wing, he'll play on the left wing. But I do know that he likes to play in the center forward.
Michelle, great day for you today, and great day in the MLS with such a blockbuster trade between CF Montreal and Inter Miami. Good for you for having that scoop. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Have a great time.
All right. We'll see what happens. I'll be curious what happens with both teams.
All right. And so will we. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right. There you have it. Michelle Kaufman of the Miami Herald. Jeremy, after hearing what you heard and knowing what you know, and by the way, this wasn't the only news today, because a couple of hours after this trade was broken by Michelle, CF Montreal sent out a report on Mason Toye. This is what it looks like as we bring up the graphic of the tweet. Forward Mason Toye successfully undergoes knee surgery. Jeremy, here's another one who's out long-term.
Yeah, Romel Kyoto and Mason Toye, both of them today. We got some information out of Honduras for Kyoto. You want to start with that, or you want to go with the trade?
Okay, go with Kyoto.
Okay, so Romel Kyoto, reports out of Honduras this morning are indicating that the injury he suffered on Saturday night is worse than anticipated. And Romel Kyoto is apparently going back to Honduras to receive treatments, and he will be watched by the doctor of the national team of Honduras, and he will not be staying here. We saw, obviously, the same thing with Matko Milovic. He left Montreal, went to work out in Argentina, also received his treatments. So that's not good news. Like Romel Kyoto being out.
Surgery in Argentina?
Yeah, exactly. Milovic had a surgery in Argentina. So we know that Romel Kyoto is injury prone, especially when he plays a lot of games. But he is the team's MVP. He was the team's MVP last year, and without him, this team is unable to score. Well, even with him this year, they're unable to score. So this is a huge blow for CF Montreal. Remember that Romel Kyoto is in his last year of contract. At the end of this year, it's done. So they got to take a decision on him. What are they going to do? And now Mason Toye, who got injured on Friday at training, missed the game on Saturday. And, we weren't sure exactly how bad the injury was. Now he gets operated. He's also out 6 to 8 weeks. Tony, this is insane. I mean, this is just a continuation of the Canadian season, basically.
Well, listen, obviously all the injuries, this is on the staff. This is a fail. I don't care what anybody tells me. This cannot be bad luck. They're playing players who are already injured and they're getting re-injured, and it's setting them back even more. This is a fail. Okay. So now Bryce Duke, we know where he's going to play. It seems, look, I think it's safe to say he's going to play as a 10. They've tried different players in the 10 position. They have not produced any results. Miljevic is still going to take a while by the time he comes back. So Bryce Duke is in pole position right now to play as a 10. All right, Lassiter, after hearing what you heard, it can go either two ways here, right? Because Kyoto's hurt, because Toye's hurt. That leaves Ibrahim. Yeah. That leaves Ofer, and that leaves Vilsaint, who hasn't played a game yet.
Yeah, Vilsaint's close to coming back from what we're hearing, but again, he hasn't played a minute. I don't think
he's going to play. He's going to play versus Von Azuri. You can already see it coming from a mile away. Okay, so now knowing what we know, Lassiter, if he plays left wing, they don't play with wingers on this team.
I know that's the problem.
They play 3-4-1-2 or 3-4-2-1, but mostly 3-4-1-2. Okay, so he either is going to have to play as a second forward or as a left wing back, and when Lapalainen is healthy, you put him at right wing back.
Right, but then you still have an issue where you don't have anybody behind him. Again, I mean, listen, I think the situation is good because Lassiter is at least a natural left foot, but he's not necessarily a wing back. So can he adapt at that position? I think they're going to try him out, Tony, because they need somebody to play that position. And even when Lassie comes back, I'm not convinced. I think Lozada's seen enough of Lassie to make him understand that he belongs on the right side of the field, not on the left side of the field. But this is already a step in the right direction because we had nobody to play on the left side of the park. Now, who knows? Maybe this player can go from, left wing back to maybe a winger's position or a second forward, let's say, in the same game. Maybe you can switch positions depending on the score, depending on what we need in that game. But it's at least an option, Tony, because the one thing that I've been saying since the beginning of the year is that this roster was unbalanced. Too many center backs. Now they got rid of one.
No left back.
No left back. No tens. No real tens that had any experience. Too many strikers. So
even Iliadis last game, they said, we're going to play him at left back. He was defending a left back, but he was more attacking like wing back, right? He was not playing in line with the three center backs. Iliadis was playing more of a wing back position on the left, and Herrera was playing more of a wing back position on the right. So they're taking players, they're moving them out of position. Some of them are not playing their natural positions. Obviously, they're not going to be their best because of it. Now, Olivier Renard, obviously feeling the pressure, felt like, you know what? He's got to react to Kyoto being hurt. He's got to react to Toy being hurt. He's got to react to not having a 10 with Milovic out as well. Now, is the onus on Losada, in your opinion?
I don't know. Tony, I don't even know if they'll be able to dress 20 guys on Saturday. That's the reality. I counted 18 healthy players, not including the 2 players from Miami, which we still don't know at this moment if they'll be available for Saturday's game. So I count 18 players. Again, it's still far from being ideal. You still have a lot of quality players that are out with injuries, and they'll be out for a long time. So maybe a little bit more, but, let's see.
And you can't recall anybody from the reserves. We know that.
So that's the other issue, okay, is that for every other MLS team that have an MLS Next Pro team, these players are under contract and they're paid. So if you have an issue like Montreal's having right now with a lot of injuries, you can call players up from MLS Next Pro. For CF Montreal, it's not the same situation. First of all, you have a limited amount of players that you can have signed for your first team, okay? That's the first thing. You can't just sign anybody as you wish. The
only
players
X amount of contracts, yes.
Exactly. In the PLSQ, the players that are playing there in Montreal's reserve are not signed and are not making a salary. So you cannot just call up these players to fill up a spot, unfortunately.
And
so
you can't say to the MLS either, please, please, this is an emergency situation. This is extreme circumstances, because the MLS is going to say no, and then they're going to hang up the phone and they're going to say, they should have put a team in the MLS Next Pro.
They're going to say like that kid on The Simpsons. Ha ha. That's what they're going to say. Well, and so this is another problem that's added on to everything else that comes with not having an MLS Next Pro team. So you're stuck. You're stuck in a certain way. I want to talk a little bit about the money that was sent to Miami, because a lot of people are complaining and saying 1.3 million in GAM is a lot.
And later I want to talk about Kamal Miller, okay? And the void that he leaves or doesn't. Go ahead.
Okay, so it is a lot of money to give up, because these 2 players that Montreal is picking up were added to Miami's roster a year ago for about $100K each. It's not a lot. You're paying for both of them about 6 times that amount. But if you truly believe in them, and you believe, for example, that Bryce Duke, and what we're hearing, and Michelle also said it, he's got a lot of potential. If he becomes a Georgi Mihailovic type of player, and you can sell him in a couple of years for $5 million, then you don't care about this $1.3 million in GAM. You also have to understand that Montreal has a lot of GAM money available. They have the $1.9 million they get at the beginning of the season. They get $3.3 million for the sale of 3 players. They also get some GAM money, about $800,000 for Kamara, for Torres. So they got a lot of GAM money lying around. So it's all right. They're not breaking the bank making this trade. But I gotta think, Tony, that Montreal, at the end of the day, they got to be irritated by the fact that they were hoping to sell Kamal Miller at a profit, just like they did for Johnston, just like they did for Kone. And now
Kamal Miller was hoping to be sold as well, because he wanted to pursue his career in Europe.
Yeah, probably. So now it's the opposite. You have to make a check in order to get rid of them. So it's the complete opposite. This is not what CF Montreal want to do. They want to be able to monetize these guys and make a profit. We all thought last year that Kamal Miller was a sure shot to be sold, and it was going to be profitable for Montreal financially. In the end, it didn't happen. But if these two guys that they just picked up now, especially Bryce Duke, if he ends up being what everybody thinks he can be, then at the end of the day, you might still end up making money. I think.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, Mihailovic was sold for over €6 million. I mean, if Bryce Duke ends up becoming, 3/4 of the player, then he's going to be selling for €4.5 million, or maybe even more going forward. So that's where they're hoping. We'll spend the money and GAM money now. Hopefully, Duke develops into the potential. Which is a very high potential, by the way, that a lot of people see in him. If he's able to hit that ceiling, then they'll be able to sell him and make money. Right. And he's got a good age too, right? He's only 22.
He's only 22, and in Miami, he was playing a position that wasn't his. A lot of people are saying, he doesn't have any numbers. Okay, but let's bring him in Montreal. Let's make him play where he's supposed to be playing, and let's see what he can do. And defensively, Tony, you had 7 central defenders. 7. Okay, and now you have Jabang, who just got off the injured list. You have to remember that Corbo always said it from day one. If I'm coming back to Montreal, I want a starter's role. And so you had to think and you had to figure in your head that they either told him, listen, one of the 3 guys is going to go soon, or, within the next year, you'll be a starter on this team. So I think it was inevitable.
All right. And for those who say they no longer have a left-footed center back, Robert Thorkelson is one. Now, whether or not he's ready for prime time, he's still a young player. That remains to be seen. But so let's just say they go with their 3 center backs. Corbo, Camacho, Waterman?
Yes,
for now?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Even though, one of those guys is going to have to play on his wrong foot on the left side of the central defender, probably.
They'll probably put Corbo on the left side, Camacho in the middle, and Waterman on his right.
Let's give Corbo a couple of weeks because he just came back. He hadn't played all winter. I know he might not look as good right now as we remember him last year, but I think once he gets into his rhythm, he'll be solid back there.
Okay, so they do have a lot of players on the back line. We should say this, though. They do lose a leader in Kamal Miller. Now, look, Everyone knows that Kamal wanted to leave. Everyone knows that Kamal wanted to go to Europe. I would imagine, by the way, with all due respect to CF Montreal, you leave Montreal to go live in Miami, to go play for David Beckham's team with Phil Neville as coach. And there's talk of Busquets and maybe even Lionel Messi. I mean, I would imagine Kamal is a pretty happy guy today, okay?
And I think, from what I understand, is that Kamal's wife or girlfriend or partner is in
Florida.
He met her while he was playing with Orlando, from what I understand. Now, don't quote me on this, but if that's the case, then she'll be happy to go back home, obviously.
They do lose a leader in that locker room. See if Montreal does.
They do, Tony, but you reach a point where, the thing is, Kamal Miller's a character player, but if his mind is not at the right place, that
you're
character it's not going to translate into anything positive, right? So, I think it was a move that they needed to make. And at the same time, it still follows up in the philosophy that they have, which is to get young players, develop them, and eventually sell them.
Olivier Renard had to react. And only time will tell if he made the right move, but he reacted. And now, look, the pressure is on CF Montreal to go out there on Saturday night in their Stade Saputo opener, score goals, and win the game. Should be an interesting game when they host DC United on Saturday night. We'll be back in a couple with another edition of the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. I'm Marinaro. He's Filosa. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. And subscribe to our Twitter at SickPod, CFMTL.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.